Hey guys, welcome back with the BMW F800GS. Today outside, as you guys can see, to go over the bike and tell you what is my setup for off-road. But now for the chit chat, let's get on it. Some of the parts I have on the bike stay on the bike, no matter what, either off-road or touring setup. We're gonna go over the touring setup in another video that I'm gonna make later on when I change the bike. But let's focus on the off-road things today, and let's start from the front of the bike. Obviously, to go off-road, you need a good set of knobby tires to actually not be fearful every time you get into soft stuff or sand. Hence, I have my TKC80 front and back, and I was fortunate enough to be able to find on eBay another set of wheels. So I actually have two sets that I can interchange really quickly to turn the bike from off-road to touring. But other than the wheel, let's move up. I have the light protector, because the light is expensive and the protector is not. So especially if you go in a group off-road, all those stones and stuff that flies up in the air is going to hit this rather than your precious and expensive light. Another thing I use when I go off-road, it's the short windshield. If you guys have followed my videos, you know I have two different windshields. And to go off-road, the best is the short one, because when I'm leaning forward, I'm not hitting it. Other than that, when it comes to the front of the bike, that is about it. Now, let's move on and let's take a look at the handlebars. When it comes to the handlebar, there are a few key things that you need to have when you go off-road. Obviously, they're not mandatory, but they're highly recommended. One of those things is handguards. Those are bark busters with a solid aluminum backbone that will prevent, in case of a fall, my levers from breaking off. On top of that, my levers are actually adjustable and they flip up, and that is what I use over here. But let's move on. As you guys can see, I have a crossbar over here which I built myself, and I attached it to the bark buster pinch point up top over here. This is not something difficult. Everybody can make one of those. It took me literally a couple of hours to fabricate it. It's a pipe. It's just an aluminum pipe, so very easy, and you can make it yourself if you have the bark buster. Moving on, as you guys can see, those are not risers for the handlebar, but this is the bracket for my Scott's steering damper. Now, when it comes to a bike this heavy in sand, a steering damper comes useful, because you can crank it up and it will track straight into soft stuff. So it's a very good thing to have. And fortunately enough, it comes with this bracket that raises the handlebar by about 20 millimeters, little less than an inch, which for me works pretty good. And at the same time, I tilted my handlebar forward a little bit because I wanted a little bit more height out of them. And obviously you adjust the controls on how you prefer them. And you can check my video on how to set up your bike. It's not all yet. It's not just about the parts that I have on the bike. It's also about the parts that I don't have on the bike. And as you guys can see, there are no mirrors. What I usually do, if I know I'm going off-road hard, I keep the left mirror on, but it's not tied up. And when I get to where I need to go, I remove it and forget about it. And that is it when it comes to my handlebar. Let's move to the main body of the bike. When it comes to the main body of the bike, there are a few key things as well. One being a solid crash bar, and this one is being really good to me. In my opinion, looks great. It was fairly cheap. At the time, I believe it was around $250. And those are Eads crash bar. On top of the good crash bar, you need a good bash plate. And this one is Outrider bash plate. And trust me, I bashed it plenty. And that will prevent my engine to break in case I go hard off-road and I drop the bike, which is never a good thing. On top of that, because I found out that every once in a while I used to slip off the rear brake with my boots, I added this enlargement thing, and this has been working really good for me, and it was incredibly cheap. On top of that, I have my Outex F pegs which pivot, and they're so grippy. Those things are so grippy. And remember, when you're out there and you're bouncing all over the place, you definitely want grippy pegs. To complement the pegs, I added outrider protection for the master cylinder, and also I added protection on the other side. This side and the other side, it's kind of good to have them both. Since you buy them, they're not that expensive, and they're way more solid than the plastic that comes with the bike itself. Let's talk about the things I do remove when I know I'm gonna go off-road for a while. This bike comes with a center stand, which is attached over here, and I remove it because when you go off-road, the center stand is bouncing up and down, and it's really annoying. Also, the bike without the center stand, it's a little lighter, and it's always good to be a little lighter, especially when you are a tank like this bike. There is one thing I wish I could remove, and I even thought about grinding it off, and it's the rear pegs, the passenger pegs. I wish this bracket would come off. Unfortunately, it's welded in and you gotta keep it, so that sucks, but moving on. All right, we made it to the rear of the bike. Now, when it comes to the rear of the bike, obviously I have a TKC80 as well, because you do need grip. Not just grip to get going, but grip to stop, amazingly enough. And I used to have the Idenau K60 Scout in the back, and every time I would go on a steep downhill, the bike would just be sliding all over the place, and I didn't like it that much. Those are much grippier, they stop the bike quicker, they get going better, and they go on a good incline without slipping and sliding all over the place. Other than the tire in the back, the only thing I added is a mud guard down here. This mud guard will prevent all the mud, dirt, rocks and sticks to actually fly into my rear suspension. And it has been good just because it's easier to clean. You just spray it off rather than get into the spring over there and try to get the chunks of mud off of it. A few other things I've done to the bike, but I would have done it no matter what, even if I didn't take it off-road, is adding an Arrow exhaust, just because it's lighter. It sounds better, because it definitely sounds better, but it's lighter and it gets weight off the back. Now the F800GS has the tank under the seat, so when you have a full tank, it's added weight on the rear of the bike. Now that keeps the CG low, but at the same time, you're ass heavy, pretty much. And obviously no bags. Now, if I know that I'm going off-road for a long while and I do not need the hard bags on, I would actually remove those brackets over here. The BMW brackets are fairly easy to remove. A couple of screws for the bottom and a few more for the top bracket, and they will lighten up the rear of the bike even more. There is another thing that you guys cannot see that I install just to go off-road, and is a smaller front sprocket. I got 1 teeth less than OEM, and that will give me a little bit more grunt at low speed. It'll make me climb a little bit steeper. And in general, it doesn't take that much off the top speed of the bike, and so far, for me, has worked really well. And that is about it. I use this net in the back if I need to carry anything, so that I don't have to get either backpack or a big bag over here. This setup has been really good to me off-road. I'm not that great at off-roading, but with the bike set up this way, I feel I'm doing way better than the way the bike comes OEM. All in all, the F800GS is a great off-road bike if you compare it to the segment, so light adventure bikes, and is built like a tank. This thing can take a lot, quite a lot. if you add a few mods to the bike, like crush bars, handguards, and knobby tires, you can really have a lot of fun for a decent price and use the same bike to tour, use the same bike to go run errands around town. As I always say, it's very multifaceted, but this is the real deal. And nowadays, those F800GS up to 2018, pretty much this body shape, they're cheap. So if you are willing to buy a used one, you can find one for a really good price. It's literally the time to get one. And if you already have one, why don't you sign up for my Patreon for a chance to win that headlight over there? Well, not that one specific. I have a new one at home that I'm gonna eventually give to one of my patrons. So check the link down below if you like what I'm doing, become a patron and get an array of perks. Also check those links for everything I have on the bike and check my playlist for the installation of mostly everything I have on the bike. There is pretty much a video for all of it. And obviously, if you like the video, if you love the video, subscribe. Stay tuned for my touring setup. Ride on, and I'll see you next time.